It all began on a quiet Sunday afternoon. The kind of afternoon that feels too peaceful to hint at what's coming next. A man named Ethan Cole sat alone in his apartment, staring at the faint light reflecting off his phone screen. His heart felt heavy, heavier than it had in years. He had just finished another difficult conversation with his fiancée, Mara. And this time, it wasn't about love, wedding plans, or dreams of the future. It was about money and family and everything that can quietly destroy a relationship when love alone isn't enough. Ethan had always seen himself as a patient man, thoughtful, level-headed, the kind of person who doesn't panic when things get hard. But lately, he felt like his patience was being tested in ways he never imagined. Before we dive deeper into what happened, if you love real-life stories that challenge your heart and make you think twice about love, loyalty, and culture, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us keep telling stories that hit home. Alright, let's go back to where it all began. When Ethan met Mara 3 years ago, it felt like fate. She was radiant. Not just beautiful, but driven, ambitious, full of fire. He met her at a corporate law conference in Singapore, where she'd been invited to speak about international acquisitions. Her poise and confidence immediately drew him in. She spoke with the kind of precision and passion that made the entire room silent. Later that night, they shared coffee at a small cafe near the harbor. The conversation flowed effortlessly. Ethan couldn't believe how much they had in common, despite coming from completely different worlds. He from Seattle, and she from a small province in the Philippines. She told him about her journey, how she'd worked herself to the bone, juggling 4 jobs, finishing law school at the top of her class, and even passing multiple bar exams, including one in New York. He was amazed, inspired. She had achieved things most people only dreamed of. But even then, behind her proud smile, there was a flicker of exhaustion in her eyes. A shadow he didn't fully understand. Fast forward 2 years. Ethan and Mara were now engaged. They'd moved in together in Los Angeles, a cozy apartment near the coast. Life should have been perfect. They were in love, building a future. But perfection rarely lasts when unspoken expectations start to surface. It began subtly. Ethan noticed how often Mara would check her phone late at night, messaging her younger brother or her father back home. He didn't think much of it at first. Family bonds were important to her, and he respected that. But soon, he began to notice patterns, money transfers, frequent ones. One morning, while they were having breakfast, he asked casually, "Hey love, I saw a few large transactions from your account this month. Everything okay?" She looked up, hesitated, and said softly, "Oh, that's for my brother. He's in nursing school. I send about $400 a month to help him with tuition." Ethan nodded. "That's generous of you," he said. "I'm proud of you for helping." And he meant it. But then, a few weeks later, another transaction appeared. Another $400. "Is that for your brother again?" he asked gently. She shook her head this time. "No, that's for my dad." Her voice trembled slightly, as if she already knew he'd have questions. Ethan paused. "Your dad?" She nodded. "He retired 10 years ago. I've been helping him since then." "Retired? At what age?" 50. Ethan blinked. 50. He hadn't expected that. At first, he tried to brush it off. After all, she earned her own money. Who was he to judge what she did with it? But as months passed, the numbers started to add up. $800 a month, every month, leaving her account like clockwork. And the more he learned, the deeper the tension grew. During a visit to the Philippines the previous summer, Ethan had discovered something that shook him. He'd walked into her father's house one evening and overheard Mara on the phone with a car dealer. She was about to spend $15,000 from her savings to buy her dad and brother a brand new electric car. He froze at the door, unsure if he'd heard right. When he confronted her later, she looked defensive, almost cornered. "They need it," she said. "They don't have reliable transportation." Ethan tried to stay calm. "Mara, that's a lot of money. You've worked so hard to save that. Maybe there's another way?" She looked down, frustrated. "You don't understand, Ethan. In my culture, when your family needs help, you give it. No questions asked." They argued that night, for the first time since they'd met. Voices raised, hearts pounding, neither willing to give in. In the end, he convinced her to change the plan. To pay the car off slowly, $100 a month instead of all at once. She agreed reluctantly, but her eyes told him what her words didn't. She resented having to choose between her family and him. From then on, a quiet distance settled between them. She was still loving, still kind, but there was something behind her smile. Guilt, maybe, or conflict. Ethan tried to focus on the good. She still cooked dinner when she could. They still went for walks by the pier on weekends. But every time she looked at her phone, every time she mentioned Papa or my brother, his chest tightened. He didn't want to be that man, the one who tells a woman what to do with her money. But he couldn't shake the fear that her generosity was going to swallow their future whole. He'd run the numbers more than once. If Mara kept sending money like this, if she started helping her mother too, which she had already hinted at, they'd be giving away more than $10,000 a year. $10,000 that could have gone toward a house, a college fund, or retirement. One evening, Ethan brought it up again. They were sitting on the couch, the TV flickering silently in front of them. "Mara," he began, his voice calm but firm. "Can we talk about your parents again?" She sighed immediately. "Ethan, please, not tonight." "I know," he said, "but we need to. You said you plan to send money to your mom when she turns 60, right?" She nodded. "Yes." "Do you know how much?" She shrugged. "I'm not sure yet. Maybe $300 a month? It depends on what I'm earning by then." He took a deep breath. "And you really think you'll be making $200,000 a year?" Her brows furrowed. "I believe I can, yes. Once I get my US license and land a good firm, it's possible." He hesitated. "What if it doesn't happen?" She frowned, confused. "Why are you always doubting me?" "I'm not doubting you," he said softly. "I'm doubting the math." She looked away, her voice low. "I just want to take care of them, Ethan. They took care of me." "I get that," he said, almost whispering. "But who's going to take care of you when you're 60? She didn't answer. The silence that followed that night was heavy, not angry, not loud, just quiet. The kind of silence that says everything words can't. Over the next few weeks, Ethan noticed she worked even harder. Long hours, barely any sleep. He worried about her health, but when he tried to bring it up, she brushed him off. Then, one Sunday, she asked something that made his stomach twist. "Ethan," she said softly, "when my mom gets older, do you think she could stay with us?" He froze. "Stay with us?" "Yes, just until she's settled." He set his coffee down slowly. "Mara, I love your mom, but I don't think that's a good idea." Her eyes dimmed. "So, your answer is no?" He hesitated. They can visit, sure. But live with us? That's different. She didn't say another word. She just nodded and turned away. That night, Ethan lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was the beginning of the end. He could feel the future they'd dreamed of slowly unraveling, not because of a lack of love, but because of a clash between duty and survival. Days turned into weeks, and the distance between them widened. Mara's smile faded faster now. Ethan's patience thinned. Every conversation about the future ended with frustration. He'd look at her sometimes and think, how did we get here? Two people who loved each other deeply, now on opposite sides of a cultural fault line neither of them could cross. Ethan didn't want to lose her, but he was terrified of the future she envisioned, one where every paycheck bled into someone else's life, while theirs stood still. And though he hadn't said it out loud yet, a question had started echoing in his mind, louder each night. Could he really marry someone whose loyalty would always belong to someone else first? That question would soon demand an answer, one that would test the limits of love, culture, and the price of family duty. But that's where we'll pause for now. In the next part, Ethan's growing doubts will lead him to a choice that could change everything, not just his relationship, but the way he sees love itself. The morning after that silent night, Ethan woke up before the sun. The air in their apartment felt different, heavy, cold, like something had shifted. Mara was already up, sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, eyes tired but focused. He watched her for a moment. She looked so determined, so fragile all at once. And he realized something. She wasn't just working for her family. She was working because of them. They were her purpose, her reason, her anchor. He approached her quietly. Morning. She looked up and forced a smile. Morning. You didn't sleep again, did you? She shook her head. I had to finish a contract draft. He wanted to say, you're burning yourself out, but the words got stuck. Instead, he kissed her forehead and poured her some coffee. They sat in silence, listening to the hum of the fridge, the city still half asleep outside. A few hours later, Ethan left for work. But his mind wasn't on meetings or deadlines. It was trapped in a loop. That same question haunting him again and again. Could he build a life with someone whose world revolved around other people? That evening, when he came home, he found Mara on the couch, her phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was soft but tense. Yes, Papa, I understand. No, I'll send it by tomorrow. Yes, I promise. When she hung up, Ethan sat down beside her. What happened? She sighed. My dad's power bill. He said the generator broke. They need help. He clenched his jaw, trying to stay calm. Didn't we just talk about Ethan? She cut in, her tone pleading. Please, it's not like I want to do this. They just have no one else. He nodded slowly, but deep down, frustration twisted inside him like a knot he couldn't untie. That night, while Mara was asleep, Ethan walked to the balcony. The city lights shimmered beneath the dark sky. He thought about his parents, both in their 70s, still working part-time jobs, not because they needed to, but because they wanted to stay active. They'd always told him, build your own life first. Then, if you can, help others. He wondered if that idea even existed in Mara's world. She had once told him that in her hometown, the eldest child carried the weight of everyone's future. It wasn't a choice. It was duty. And she wore that duty like armor, proud, but heavy. Ethan leaned against the railing, the wind brushing against his face. For the first time, he felt fear, not of losing Mara, but of losing himself inside a life built around her family's needs. The following weekend, they had dinner with a few of Ethan's friends. Everything seemed fine at first. Laughter, wine, easy conversation. But when one of his friends asked Mara if she and Ethan were saving for a house, the mood shifted. She smiled politely. "We're saving, but slowly." "I've had some family expenses recently." Ethan noticed the quick glances around the table. His friends were polite enough not to say anything, but their eyes said it all. After dinner, in the car, the silence was sharp. Finally, Mara spoke. "You looked embarrassed tonight." "What?" "When I said I send money home, you looked uncomfortable." He hesitated. "It's not that I'm embarrassed, Mara. It's complicated to explain to people who don't understand." She turned toward the window. "Maybe you don't understand either." He sighed. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" she whispered. For days, things between them were tense. Mara buried herself in work. Ethan spent longer hours at the office. They passed each other like ghosts, sharing the same space. One evening, Ethan came home to find Mara sitting on the floor with her laptop and a pile of papers. She looked pale, exhausted. "What's going on?" he asked gently. She rubbed her eyes. "I'm applying for another job." A side contract with a New York firm. "Another job? Mara, you're already working 7 days a week." "I need to, Ethan. My brother's scholarship doesn't cover everything, and my dad?" He interrupted, his voice rising despite himself. "Mara, when does it stop? When do we get to live?" Her eyes filled with tears. "You think I want this life? You think I enjoy watching my father struggle?" He took a step back, his own frustration breaking through. "I think you're sacrificing your future for people who don't even try to stand on their own." She flinched. Silence swallowed the room. Then, quietly, she said, "If I don't help them, who will?" Ethan had no answer. That night, she slept on the couch. He lay awake in their bed, staring at the ceiling again, the same thought pounding in his head like a drumbeat. This can't last. The next morning, she left early for work. On the table, she'd left a note, short and neat. "Please don't be angry. I'll figure it out. I just need time." Ethan folded the note and slipped it into his wallet, but the ache in his chest only grew heavier. Weeks passed. They tried to patch things up. Date nights, long talks, little apologies that never fully healed the cracks. But beneath every smile, there was still that unspoken truth. Mara's heart was split in two. Half belonged to Ethan, the other half to her family. And no matter how much he loved her, Ethan couldn't make peace with that. Then came the breaking point. One Friday evening, Ethan came home early with takeout, hoping for a quiet dinner together. He opened the door to find Mara on a video call, crying softly. Her father's face flickered on the laptop screen. "I just need help, Anak," he was saying. "Your uncle's hospital bill." Ethan froze in the doorway. Another emergency, another plea. When she hung up, she saw him standing there. "Ethan, please." He held up a hand. "How much?" Her voice broke. 800. He took a deep breath, his voice trembling. "Mara, that's our rent money." Tears welled in her eyes. "I know, but I can't ignore them." "He's family. And what are we, Mara?" he asked softly. "What are we?" She didn't answer. That night, Ethan didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just packed a small bag and went to stay with a friend. Mara called him once, twice, then stopped. For 2 days, he stayed away, trying to think. trying to separate love from reason. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face. The woman who had fought her way out of poverty, who had built everything with her own hands, now trapped in the same cycle she'd escaped. He loved her. God, he loved her. But he didn't know how to save her from something she didn't see as a problem. On the third night, he went back home. The lights were off, but she was awake, sitting by the window. He sat beside her, neither of them speaking for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "I thought you weren't coming back." "I almost didn't." Her hands trembled. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I really am. But they're my family. If I turn my back on them, who am I?" He looked at her, his voice quiet, broken. "And if you keep giving everything away, who will you become?" Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Maybe this is just who I am." He nodded slowly. "Maybe it is." They sat there in silence again. Two people who loved each other deeply, yet knew love wasn't enough. Ethan didn't leave that night, but he didn't stay forever either. Over the next few weeks, they drifted further apart, not with anger, but with sadness. Mara kept working, kept sending, kept hoping he would understand. Ethan kept trying to accept it, but the weight of that hope crushed him a little more each day. Until one morning, he woke up, looked at her sleeping beside him, and realized something painful and clear. Sometimes love means walking away, not because you've stopped caring, but because staying would mean losing yourself completely. And with that thought, he made his decision. But the story isn't over yet. In the next part, Ethan will face the hardest choice of all: to end the engagement or risk a lifetime of silent resentment. And what happens next will test not just his heart, but hers too. It was a gray morning when everything changed. The kind of morning where the sky hangs low and the world feels heavy, like it knows a storm is coming. Ethan hadn't slept much the night before. He'd been lying awake, replaying their last conversation again and again. The tears, the silence, the words that felt like cracks forming in the foundation of their love. When he finally got out of bed, Mara was already gone. Her coffee mug still sat half empty on the counter, a quiet reminder of all the mornings they'd shared, and how far away those mornings now felt. He stood there for a long time, staring at that mug, realizing that love can be loud when it begins, but heartbreak always arrives in silence. Later that afternoon, Mara texted him. Just 2 words. "Dinner tonight?" He stared at the message for a while before replying. "Okay." He didn't know what to expect. A goodbye, maybe? Or another fight? But something inside him told him this dinner mattered. That evening, they met at a small restaurant near the coast. The same place where they'd gone on their 3rd date years ago. The same place where Ethan had once told her, "I think I could spend my life with you." Now he wasn't so sure. When she walked in, she looked exhausted but composed. Her dark hair was tied back, her eyes heavy but steady. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hey." They sat down. For a while, neither spoke. The clinking of glasses and quiet chatter around them filled the air. Finally, Mara broke the silence. "I know you're thinking about leaving." Ethan froze. She continued, her voice trembling. "I can feel it. Every time you look at me, it's like you're already halfway gone." He sighed. "Mara, I don't want to leave. But I don't know how to stay like this." She nodded, her eyes glistening. "I understand." "Do you?" he asked softly. "Because it doesn't feel like it." She leaned forward, her voice breaking. "Ethan, I'm trying. But my parents, they need me." "And what about us?" She hesitated. "They're a part of me." If you love me, you have to accept that. He swallowed hard. I do love you. But love doesn't mean letting it destroy us. The waiter arrived with their meals. Neither touched their food. The tension sat between them like a third presence at the table. After a long pause, Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Mara's breath caught. What are you doing? He opened it slowly. Inside was the engagement ring. The same one he'd given her a year ago, glimmering faintly under the restaurant lights. He looked at it for a moment, then at her, and his voice cracked as he said, I think we need to talk about this. Mara's hands began to shake. Please don't. Mara, he whispered. I love you more than I can say, but I can't build a future on something that keeps falling apart. Tears streamed down her face. You promised me forever. I did, he said softly. But forever only works if we're walking in the same direction. She reached across the table and grabbed his hand. Then tell me how to fix this. Please. He looked at her, really looked. At the woman who had fought every battle life threw at her. The woman whose heart was too big for her own good. There's nothing to fix, he said quietly. You're not wrong for helping your family. You're just not ready to stop. And I can't live waiting for the day you finally will. She closed her eyes, sobbing quietly. You think I don't hate this too? You think I don't wish things were different? I know you do, he said. And that's what makes this so hard. The rain started outside, soft at first, then heavier. People hurried past the windows with umbrellas, while inside, time seemed to slow. Mara finally stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. So that's it? She whispered. After everything? Ethan stood too, his voice shaking. It doesn't have to be the end, Mara. Maybe it's just not our time. She stared at him for a long moment, long enough for 1,000 memories to flash between them. Their first kiss, their late-night talks, their laughter, their dreams. Then she nodded slowly. I'll send someone to pick up the rest of my things next week. He didn't stop her. He couldn't. He just watched as she walked out into the rain, her figure fading beneath the streetlights, until she was gone. That night, Ethan sat in his car outside the restaurant, rain tapping against the windshield. The engagement ring sat in his hand, cold and shining. He didn't cry. Not yet. He just sat there, staring at the small symbol of something that had meant everything. Finally, he whispered, I hope you find peace, Mara. He placed the ring back in its box and drove home, the city lights blurring through his tears. Days passed, then weeks. Ethan threw himself into work, into routine, into anything that made the silence feel smaller. But every so often, he'd catch himself reaching for his phone, wanting to text her, to ask if she was okay, if she was sleeping, if she'd eaten. He never did. One night, he scrolled through her old photos. There she was, smiling under the Manila sun, her family beside her. They looked happy, proud. And for the first time, he saw it clearly. She hadn't chosen them over him. She had simply chosen the part of herself she could never let go of. A few months later, fate decided to twist the knife one more time. Ethan was walking out of a coffee shop when he saw her, Mara, standing across the street. Her hair was shorter now, her posture stronger, but her eyes, they were the same. She saw him too. Their eyes met for a brief electric second. Then she crossed the street. Hi, she said, breathless. Hey, he replied, his voice soft. They stood there awkwardly for a moment before she smiled faintly. "You look good." "So do you." "How's work?" she asked. "Busy." "You?" "Still working too much," she said with a small laugh, "but I've cut back a little." He smiled. "That's good." She hesitated, then said, "I wanted to tell you something. My brother graduated. He's a nurse now. Got a job in Cebu." Ethan's eyes softened. "That's amazing, Mara. You must be proud." "I am," she said quietly. "He told me to thank you for trying to help me see balance. I didn't back then, but I do now." He nodded, emotion rising in his throat. "I'm glad." They stood there, the city moving around them, both of them changed, both of them still carrying the weight of what had been. Finally, Mara said, "I'm sorry for everything, Ethan. I really am." He looked at her, and for the first time, he didn't feel pain, just peace. "You don't need to be sorry," he said. "We just loved each other in different ways." She smiled softly. "Maybe in another life." Maybe. And with that, she turned and walked away again. But this time, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like closure. That night, Ethan sat by his window, the city lights reflecting in his glass. He thought about Mara, about love, sacrifice, and the fragile balance between heart and responsibility. He finally understood something he hadn't before. Sometimes love isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when to let go and wishing the other person well, even from afar. If you've ever loved someone whose world didn't align with yours, you know how hard it is to walk away. But maybe, like Ethan, you'll learn that letting go doesn't erase the love. It just sets both hearts free. And if this story touched you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because sometimes the most powerful love stories are the ones that don't end the way we expect. Years had passed since Ethan and Mara parted ways. Life, relentless as it always is, had carried them both forward, not without scars, not without memories that lingered like shadows in quiet rooms. Ethan had moved to a larger apartment by the coast, closer to work and the rhythm of the city. He had learned to sleep better, to breathe easier, to live day by day without letting fear of the past dominate his mornings. But he never stopped thinking about Mara, not in the obsessive way, but in that quiet, knowing way that love leaves behind. Mara, on the other hand, had returned to the Philippines for a time, working tirelessly to stabilize her family's situation. Her father had recovered financially, her brother had moved into his first apartment as a fully licensed nurse, and her mother had finally retired comfortably. All because she had chosen to fight, and because she had learned the hard way that sacrifice has limits. Yet even with success and security, Mara felt a hollow space in her heart. She had given so much to others that she had left herself with fragments that reminded her nightly of a love she couldn't forget. One sunny afternoon, both of them unexpectedly found themselves in Seattle. Ethan was attending a conference for work. Mara was there for a legal seminar. Neither had planned to see the other, and yet somehow, fate had intertwined their paths again. He was leaving a coffee shop when she walked past him, moving swiftly, carrying a leather briefcase and her signature determined gaze. Time froze for a second. Their eyes met. It was as if the years melted away. The distance, the pain, the misunderstandings, replaced by the same deep, undeniable connection they had always shared. "Mara," Ethan breathed, almost involuntarily. She stopped, turned slowly. "Ethan!" For a moment, neither moved. The city noises became distant. The pedestrians faded into the background, and all that existed was the unspoken history between them. Then Mara smiled, small, cautious, but genuine. "You look happy." "I've learned to be," he said softly. "And you?" "Better," she admitted. "I've had to figure out who I am, beyond everyone else. It hasn't been easy." Ethan nodded, understanding instantly. "I know the feeling. I've grown too, learned the hard way about balance, about what we deserve, and how love sometimes isn't enough." They walked together slowly, side by side, beneath the shadow of towering skyscrapers. Neither rushed to fill the silence with words. The silence itself was healing, carrying all the grief, love, and regret into a gentle space of understanding. "I never stopped caring," Ethan finally said. "Nor did I," Mara whispered, glancing at him. "But we had to let go. For ourselves. And maybe for each other, too." They paused by a park fountain, watching the water shimmer in the afternoon sun. For a long while, neither spoke. But this time, the quiet wasn't heavy. It was soft, warm, and full of possibility. Finally, Mara turned to him with a laugh, light, free, unexpected. "Do you remember the coffee shop in Singapore? The first time we talked for hours and never noticed the world around us?" Ethan smiled. "How could I forget?" That day felt infinite. She tilted her head, eyes bright. Maybe we can have something like that again? Not exactly the same, but something new. He nodded, his chest tightening. "I'd like that." They spent the rest of the afternoon together, walking, laughing, talking about everything and nothing. No promises, no expectations. Just the joy of rediscovering someone they had once loved so deeply. And for the first time in years, they both felt free. Free from guilt, free from fear, free to love in a way that honored both themselves and each other. That night, as Ethan walked home alone, he realized something important. Life doesn't always give second chances, but it does give clarity. And sometimes the love that survives isn't about holding on too tightly, or sacrificing endlessly, or forcing the impossible. It's about knowing yourself, respecting the other person, and allowing love to grow at its own pace, even if that pace takes years to find its way back to you. Mara returned home that evening too, sitting by her window, watching the city lights flicker across the skyline. She smiled faintly. Not because the past was perfect, but because the present finally felt right. They had lost each other once, and in losing themselves, they had found clarity. And perhaps, just perhaps, this time, they wouldn't let go again. Sometimes love isn't about the grand gestures, the promises, or the sacrifices that consume us. It's about balance, understanding, and timing. It's about knowing when to fight and when to step back. And it's about letting someone go, only to let them return when the world has aligned just right. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Because sometimes the hardest lessons about love are also the most beautiful, and the ones we carry with us for the rest of our lives.